Hello, I'm Tim McAleer, CEO of the Tradies Group. This incorporates Tradies Guymere and Tradies Caringbah. I'm here to talk with you about safety, specifically the personal safety of everyone who is involved in any way with our venues. Tradies has always been committed to safety in the workplace. Changes to work health and safety legislation has placed stringent obligations on us to ensure the health and safety of everyone in our club. We obviously have a primary commitment to our staff, trainees and apprentices. However, the new legislation places further obligation on our business for the work, health and safety of contractors or subcontractors that we may engage at our venues. They're employees of labour hire companies that we may utilise from time to time, and any outworker that we engage, students on work experience and volunteers. To this end, we have prepared an induction for our valued contractors, business partners, students and volunteers who carry out a role at Tradies. The induction will provide positive direction on our work, health and safety policies and procedures, site rules, safe systems of work and hazard identification processes. It will provide clear instruction on what we require from you in order to minimise the work, health and safety risks to you and others working at Tradies. There are tough penalties and potential personal liabilities written into the current work health and safety legislation. We make no apologies for taking our obligations seriously or for taking a no exceptions approach to compliance with our policies and procedures. Let me be clear, non-compliance is not acceptable. A failure to comply with our policies and procedures may result in you, your team or your company being asked to stop work and leave. Failure to comply with our policies and procedures may also have potential consequences for ongoing work and contracts. Each of Tradies' venues is unique, therefore if you're engaged at more than one venue, you and your team will be required to complete a main induction and a site-specific induction for each location. The site-specific information is critical safety information, so please pay attention. So on behalf of the Tradies Group, I thank you for your cooperation and I look forward to working with you.
Welcome to the General Site Induction for Tradies Group. This induction relates to your involvement with Tradies Guymere, located at 57 Manchester Road, Guymere, and Tradies Caringbah, located at 28 to 30 Banksia Road, Caringbah. This induction has been designed to provide you with a basic understanding of the issues surrounding workplace health and safety and what we require from you to assist us in minimising the risk of injury to any person who may be at one of our venues. Our inductions are competency-based programs, so you'll be required to answer a series of questions at the end of each induction program. At the completion of this general induction, you'll be required to undertake the shorter site-specific inductions for all Tradies venues, that is, venues where you will be visiting or working. What are your responsibilities? A key issue that you should understand in relation to WH&S is that workplace safety is everyone's responsibility, including yours. The Smart Tech Trade Card System. By now you would have registered or been registered in the Smart Tech Compliance Management System. An ongoing condition of entry to any of our venues is that you have successfully undertaken this main induction and the site-specific inductions for both our venues. Further, there may be a requirement to be re-inducted at some stage in the future, if required. The Smart Tech Trade Card will be your identification when you're visiting either of our venues. The Smart Tech Trade Card does not constitute or substitute for membership in any of the Tradies venues. Scan on arrival. It's imperative from a work health and safety perspective that we know who is on our premises at any time. Therefore, on arrival at either of our clubs, you're required to present your Smart Tech Trade Card at reception and then scan your card in the Smart Tech scanning terminal, located in the front foyer. Under no circumstances are you allowed to enter the site without scanning your Smart Tech identification card prior to commencing work. If you fail to scan in, you may be asked to leave without further explanation. When you leave the club, It's a requirement that you scan out using the same terminal. Scan times will be utilised to audit contractor attendance against invoices received. If there's been a failure to scan in and out, there's a risk that any invoice for time and attendance will not be paid. You must display your identification whilst you're present at any Tradies venue and produce the card on demand from any of our staff. CCTV. Tradies operates a comprehensive closed-circuit television system. This system supervises each of our sites and may be used to inspect works being undertaken by you and others working on site. This is specifically in relation to attendance at the site and actions by people working on the site. Captured video data may be retained and may later be used in other jurisdictions. Restricted areas. There are a number of restricted areas at our venues. They'll be identified in the specific site inductions which you'll need to undertake. However, it should be clear that you are not permitted to enter a restricted area at one of our venues without the express consent of a duty manager, and only then in the company of a tradie staff member. Smoking policy. The Smoke-Free Environment Act prohibits smoking indoors at each of our sites. You're not permitted to smoke at any outdoor work area while performing work. Each site has a dedicated smoking area for employees, contractors, and service providers. If you smoke, you should identify the designated smoking area and only smoke within this area. Alcohol and drugs. You are not permitted to consume alcohol unless in the course of your normal employment. You must not use or be under the effects of prohibited drugs while at any of our venues. If we suspect that you're under the influence of alcohol or prohibited drugs, you'll be asked to stop work immediately and risk termination of the company's authority to enter our venues and potentially its contract with Tradies. The duty manager has been delegated the authority on behalf of the Tradies group to terminate any work being conducted by any person they suspect of being under the influence of alcohol or prohibited drugs. The decision of the duty manager is final. If you're requested to leave by a duty manager, you must leave the site immediately. In your capacity as a trade card holder, you're not permitted to use any gaming machine whilst at our venue unless this is in the course of your employment. Your personal behaviour. We're committed to ensure all employees, contractors, service providers, volunteers and customers are not exposed to any form of bullying, harassment or discrimination. Bullying, discrimination and harassment may include actions or comments by a person who's been influenced by the following: race, colour, nationality, descent or ethnic origin, sex, marital status, pregnancy or carer responsibilities, sexual preference, age, physical characteristics, religious or political beliefs. If you're subjected to any form of behaviour which you believe constitutes bullying or harassment, we require that you report the incident to your employer and either directly or through your employer to us. The report can be made to any of our senior management from duty manager up or by email to hr@tradies.com.au. All reported incidents will be investigated. If there is an allegation of bullying or harassment made against you, we may suspend your access to our venues until the matter is fully investigated. Your personal presentation. You're required to be dressed consistent with each Tradies venue dress regulations and appropriately for the type of work you're performing. Personal protective equipment must be used in accordance with approved safe work method statements. In the unlikely event that a site dress code conflicts with the use of clothing or personal protective equipment essential for your work, then of course the work clothing and PPE takes precedence. Dirty or torn clothing with offensive motifs is not permitted and may see you excluded from the site. The duty manager's decision will be final. Offensive language. We prohibit the use of offensive language at Tradies venues. If you use offensive language, you may be asked to leave our venue. Behaviour on site. Tradies does not condone risk-taking behaviour. You might think something a joke or just a bit of skylarking, but this behaviour is not consistent with minimising risk and maximising work health and safety. Anyone indulging in risk-taking behaviour risks being asked to leave our venue immediately. Removal of club property. Under no circumstances are you allowed to remove any property of the Tradies group without the express consent of a duty manager. If consent is granted, the duty manager will record this in their shift report. You should ensure that this is confirmed before removing the property. The removal of any property without this consent will be considered theft and the police will be notified. Personal protective equipment, or PPE. Tradies maintains personal protective equipment for work which is undertaken by our employees. You must provide your own personal protective equipment consistent with that identified in the Safe Work Method Statements, or SWMS, submitted prior to work commencing. This PPE is essential as it minimises exposure to risks arising from the work you're undertaking. Under all circumstances, you are to undertake work using the appropriate personal protective equipment. If you fail to use personal protective equipment while undertaking works that demands it, you'll be asked to leave the site. The contract that you're working under may also be reviewed. Performing your designated role. At all times, you must adhere to your own company's WH&S management plan as well as the requirements of Tradies' WH&S policies and procedures. Do not undertake any work for which you are not suitably qualified, licensed or approved. At all times, work must be carried out in accordance with your company's Safe Work Method Statement. Safe Work Method Statements. As part of your company's registration on the SmartTech system, Safe Work Method Statements may have been requested. From time to time, further and/or updated statements may also be required for some notifiable works. All contractors and service providers are obliged to conduct work consistent with the Safe Work Method Statements produced at the time of registration and as later updated. Failure to do so may see you asked to leave our venue and has the potential to impact on existing and future contracts. Notifiable works. Contractors and service providers must notify the duty manager or supervisor prior to commencing any of the following work: working at any height above 1 metre, concrete cutting or coring, grinding or any work likely to create dust or smoke, accessing of any confined space, work where the isolating of essential services such as gas, water, electricity or communications. Hot works. If you intend to conduct any hot works at one of our venues, you must obtain a written authorisation. To receive the authorisation, you must, no less than 24 hours before you intend commencing, provide tradies with documentation which will identify the nature of the work to be undertaken, the location of the works, the estimated duration, a statement confirming that you have reviewed any existing SWMS to confirm that it is current and applicable to the works being proposed. You'll not be permitted to begin any hot work until this authority is granted. In specific and urgent cases, this documentation may be completed immediately prior to the works commencing, but only on the express authorisation of the duty manager or above, and this consent must be noted in the shift log. Handling chemicals, hazardous substances. Tradies maintains chemicals at each site. All chemicals are labelled and material safety data sheets, or MSDS, are available for each chemical. Contractors and service providers are required to inspect material safety data sheets prior to using any chemicals. Contractor and service providers who bring chemicals into any of our venues and as part of the work they're undertaking must ensure the chemicals are labelled and make available material safety data sheets. Contractors and service providers who produce chemicals in unlabelled containers and do not have material safety data sheets for chemicals they bring onto the site risk having their work terminated. Hazardous Substance Register. If you're involved in bringing hazardous substances into our venues or using them once they are on site, you must maintain a hazardous substance register. The register must be displayed within all relevant areas of our venues. You must also upload a copy of your hazardous substances register into the SmartTech compliance management system. Further copies must be provided as the register must be updated as additions and amendments are made. Hazard management. It's extremely important to restate the message that everyone is responsible for work, health and safety. If you see a potential hazard or risk, it's imperative that you report it to a supervisor or one of our WH&S representatives. If you identify a hazard to work, health and safety, you must, if it is safe to do so, remove the hazard immediately. If it's not safe to remove the hazard and an immediate threat exists, isolate the hazard, continue to supervise the hazard and notify a duty manager. Do not leave the hazard until such time as the duty manager arrives and you're released from the supervision. If not safe to remove the hazard and no immediate threat exists, immediately notify a duty manager. Incident reporting. You must inform the duty manager immediately if any person is injured, any accident or incident involving work, health and safety has occurred, any person is involved in an incident where there was a near miss, any failure of plant and equipment, any unsafe exposure or spillage, any unsafe exposure to or spillage of a hazardous chemical, any malfunction, interruption or failure of the site's essential services, i.e. gas, water, electricity or communications. Injury management. If you're injured at any of the tradie sites, we require you to seek medical attention. If you're injured at one of our venues, we need to know about it so the incident can be recorded and we can review procedures to identify any issue with work methods. If you're injured and have required medical attention, you'll be required to provide evidence of your fitness for work prior to being readmitted to the site. If you've been injured at one of our venues but did not require medical assistance, you'll be required to complete a Fitness for Work certificate, declaring your fitness for work prior to being readmitted to the site. This is to ensure there is no further risk to you and no risk is posed to any person affected by work that you are undertaking. WH&S is the responsibility of everyone. If you have any concerns about work, health and safety of any of our sites, please email hr@tradies.com.au. If there is an immediate threat to work, health and safety, we encourage you to speak with the manager or supervisor on duty immediately. Emergency procedures. If you identify anything which immediately impacts on the health and safety of anyone on any site, you are to stop work and notify the duty manager immediately. Each tradies venue is fitted with an emergency warning intercommunication system, or EWIS, which activates automatically when a fire is detected and can be manually activated by the Chief Warden if they determine that an evacuation is necessary. The main people in any emergency evacuation are White Hat, Chief Warden, Communications Officer, Deputy Chief Warden. Yellow Hat, Floor or Area Wardens. Red Hat, Wardens. Green Hat, First Aid. Accept every direction given by these people. It may save a life, and it may be yours. Emergency evacuation signs are located throughout each tradies venue. These signs provide details about evacuation routes and the location of assembly areas. Specific site inductions will provide greater detail for each site. When an alarm activates, you must stop work immediately, exit the club and proceed to the nearest assembly area. All work equipment must remain on site until you're permitted to re-enter. There is no requirement for you to scan out during an evacuation at the SmartTech site scanning terminal. Under no circumstances are you to re-enter the venue without the express consent of the Chief Warden. Consultation. Tradies is committed to consultation with you and your employer. This will include communication regarding any changes to our venues, changes to operational requirements, any assessment that identifies risks and treatments which may have the capacity to impact on the health and safety of anyone at Tradies. In addition to this, we encourage your feedback on work health and safety issues, so please email us at hr@tradies.com.au. Assessment. You'll now be asked to answer a series of questions to demonstrate your understanding of the Tradies General Induction. At the end of the questions, you'll be able to check and retake any of which you may have answered incorrectly.